Hi, I'm Janice Switlo, and today I'm going to be quoting from the Chronicles of Canada, Volume 29, The Day of Sir John Macdonald by Sir Joseph Pope. This is in Part 8, The Growth of Nationality. And I'm referring to page 134 thereof. And this may help people understand why, when I speak of treaties and nation to nation, I am not including provinces, and the distinction between that, so an actual treaty, and land claims where you do have provinces involved, can perhaps be best articulated in reference to this section. The American Union is in reality a federation of sovereign states, of which Congress is the creation. This being the case, it is not incongruous that these states should retain control over congressional elections. But the Canadian provinces are not sovereign. On the contrary, they are, in a real sense, subordinate to the central government. Now, Sir John A. Macdonald had also observed with ever-growing concern a disposition on the part of some of the provincial legislatures to amend their electoral franchises in a democratic direction. Now, the necessity of a property qualification for the right to vote was ever a first principle with him, the central dogma of his political faith. He said with much energy that no man who favored manhood suffrage without a property qualification had a right to call himself a conservative. Once, when Sir John was dwelling on his favorite doctrine in the House of Commons, a member interrupted him to know if he might ask a question. "Certainly," replied Sir John. "Well," said the member, "many years ago, during the gold fever, I went out to California. And while there working in the diggings, I acquired an interest in a donkey. Under it, I voted. Before the next election came round, the donkey died, and then I had no vote. Who voted on the first election? I or the donkey?" And there was much laughter that erupted, and Sir John A. Macdonald did not actually respond, but joined in the laughter. So ironic, isn't it, that in the course of purporting to be able to quote-unquote annex the West, that Sir John A. Macdonald felt the requirement to own property to dictate who could vote. So the main point, however, in this section that I wanted to point out to people is this concept that provinces are not in and of themselves sovereign. It is not like the situation in the States, the United States of America. And because of this, when elders become uncomfortable, and others, with the inclusion of provinces in negotiations or in the offloading of federal responsibilities to provinces, which is only possible when the Indigenous nationals come under Canada and thereby only carry their Canadian nationality, which then, of course, provincial jurisdictions, division of powers under the Constitution Act 1867 applies. It's not limited to the Section 91 sub 24 of the federal government being responsible in relation to, read that as diplomacy and fulfilling Crown obligations to Indigenous nations as per treaties. That no longer is the limit of the application of jurisdiction involving Indigenous nationals. Because of course at that point they are no longer Indigenous nationals. As said, they are quote-unquote Indigenous Canadians, Aboriginal peoples, Indigenous peoples of Canada. Section 35 fully applies at that point, and there we go. So what's the distinction? Of course, you can't get to that point unless there is a capitulation. That happens one of two ways: where there are no treaties, persuade the people to enter into land claims settlement agreements. Where there are treaties, persuade the people to abandon who they are, come under through self-government agreements, for example, and other opt-in legislative pieces, which the people don't actually fully opt in. Those votes, for example, are only 25% plus one, and that can in no way be seen to meet the requirements for actual capitulation of sovereignty that the Crown requires. So that's all I have to say.